Okay, let's talk about how to play Clash of Cultures. Clash of Cultures is a game that's lasts 6 rounds. During each round there are 3 turns. And on each turn, each player can take 3 actions. We'll go over the different actions they can take in just a second, but first a couple of base concepts. We have different spaces on the board. We have fertile spaces which can produce food, forest spaces wood, mountain spaces ore. We have barren spaces which can produce food if you get the irrigation technology. We have water spaces which can produce food and other things if you get the fishing technology and build a port. Cities. Cities are based on sizes. This is called a settlement piece or a city. The term is interchangeable for this game. This is a size 1 city. Size is important because certain things like collecting resources or building units are based on the size. How do you increase the size? Well, you build buildings around it, like academies or fortresses. So right now that is a size 3 city. And if another city was out on the board, say there, that would be a size 1. The other thing to keep in mind is the size of a city can never be larger than the amount of cities you have on the board. So in this case I have 2 cities on the board. This is a legal city because it's size 2. That is not because it's size 3. Last concept about cities before we get into the actions. A city can be in one of 3 states. It is neutral, as it is now. It is happy, or it's angry. Neutral city, nothing to discuss. Happy city acts as if it was a size bigger. So a size 1 city would be considered a size 2 city for actions like collecting resources. And an angry city always acts as a size 1 city. So even if it was a size 2, it would only collect 1 resource because it's angry. It also can't do other things like build buildings and so forth. So those are some of the basic concepts of the game. So, turn actions. As we discussed when we went over the resource and advance board, one of the things you can do is take an advance. That costs 2 food. Simply pay the food, or ideas, or gold, as we discussed before, and you take the advance. That's an action. You can found a city. You start the game with a city and a settler unit. One of the first things you're going to do relatively quickly is get this guy moving and then take a found city action. You simply remove him and you place another settlement piece out there. So that is founding a city. There's no cost other than the initial cost to build a settler unit. Another thing you can do is move units. So for a move action, you can move 3 units or 3 groups of units 1 space. All units move 1 space unless you have advances that allow you to move more. So for 1 move action, I could go 1, 1, and 1. Now army units can stack. You can have 4 in a space. So again, for 1 move action, I could go 1 and 1. Okay. So in other words, if I want to move these guys twice in a turn, I have to take 1 move action and then another move action. Pretty simple. Boats behave differently. Boats basically, for a move action, can move as far as they want in a contiguous water line. So if there was more water up here, I can move all the way up here. Now, I don't have another tile out, but sometimes the tiles are like this. And when you move to explore, you simply move into here. You say which hex you're going to move into. You flip the board over. There's some rules for placement, which I'm not going to go over here. But that's how you explore. Boats have the option of, again, if this guy was on the outside and there were some more tiles, it could go along the outside. You need a special advance for this called navigation. But it could go to the outside to the next unexplored tile, flip it. If there's water, it can move into it. If not, it has to come back if the tile remains flipped. That type of movement sounds more confusing than it is. It makes more sense when a full board is set up. Okay, Civic Improvement action is the 4th type of action you can take. And basically, You might remember, if you watched the video on the advancement board, that when we take advances that have a yellow thing, not only do we move our happiness up on the track, but we also get these yellow tokens, these happiness tokens. Well, you spend these to do civic improvements. So this neutral city, it would cost me one of these to make it a happy city. You basically have to spend as many of these based on the size of the city. So if this was a size 2 neutral city, I would have to spend 2 of these to make it a happy city, and then you simply place that there. When a city is angry, like this, I would need to spend 1 to make it neutral, and then another one to make it happy. So obviously the bigger the size of the city, the more happiness markers you're going to have to pay to get it from angry to neutral, neutral to happy, etc. That's a civic improvement action. Okay, the activate a city action. I'm going to put my other settlement bag out on the board here, and we're going to make this city happy for this example. So when you activate a city, you can do one of 3 things. You can build units, and you basically pay the cost. A settler costs 2 food, an army a food and an ore, and a ship unit costs 2 wood. To build a ship unit, you have to have a city with a port. So basically, in the beginning of the game, you're worried about food and ore. So like I said, a food and ore to build an army unit. This is a size 2 city. I could build 2 units there. I could build 2 army units. I could build an army unit and a settler. Obviously, I have to pay the cost for all this. This is a size 1 city. I can only build 1 there. Okay? When you activate a city, you're activating an individual city, not all of your cities. And I'll get into that in a little bit more in just a few seconds here. You can collect resources. Basically, you can collect resources from your space and any of the spaces around you. Okay? You cannot collect... This guy cannot collect from here. So in this game, you're going to be building cities on top of each other, but there's really no way around it. The boards are pretty tight when they're set up. But this particular city, if I did an activate city, collect resources action, it could collect 2 resources because it's happy. It acts as size 2. So I could take a food and a wood. I could take 2 wood. I could take a food and an ore, a wood and an ore. You cannot collect from the same space twice during the same activation. So even though I can collect 2 resources here, I cannot collect 2 food because I only have 1 fertile space within my city vicinity. Obviously, again, this size 1 city can only collect 1 resource. Now, the other thing you can do is increase city size, and again, based on what I just explained before, either one of these could become a size 2. Every building in the game costs a food, an ore, and a wood. And then you obviously need the advance from the advance board to build it. So if I wanted to build a temple, I would pay a food, an ore, and a wood, and I just slap that down there. So those are the 3 things you can do when activating a city. Build units, collect resources, increase city size. Now you can work a city more than once. And when you do that, their mood decreases. So let's use this city as an example. I activate it with my first action, my turn, and I collect resources, and I collect a food and a wood. For my second action, my turn, I activate it again. Because it's still happy at this point, I still get to collect 2 resources, so this time I'm going to take an ore and a food. But then this goes away. If I wanted to, I could activate it a 3rd time. This time I'm only going to collect 1 resource, but then it becomes angry. An angry city can only be activated once a turn, obviously. So you can work a city, but like I said, the mood's going to change. Later in the game, as your cities become bigger, overworking them is not such a good idea unless you need to, because if they become angry, or even if they become neutral when they're happy, it costs a lot more to get them back into a good mood, so to speak. Okay. The last action I didn't discuss is cultural influence. You're going to have to use your imagination for me here and pretend that this yellow city that I'm making a size 2 is another color, like blue. So cultural influence works like this. Basically, you can make a cultural influence action, and in a cultural influence, you're basically trying to turn one of the buildings into the other city into your color. Why is that important? Because buildings at the end of the game in your color are worth 1 point. You can only make a cultural influence action on size 2 cities and above, And the range of your cultural influence is based on the size of your city. So in this case, he's 2 away. I couldn't do this without spending some culture tokens. Okay, culture tokens can be used to boost the range of my attempt and also the roll. So basically, what I would do is I would, let's say I had 3 culture tokens, okay, and I was going to try and do a culture influence on that city right there. I would basically spend 1 to get within range, and then I would roll a 6-sided dice, and on a 5 or 6 I would succeed. If I got the success, I would get rid of this building, pretending it was blue, and replace it with a building of my color, which is yellow. And what does that mean for the player who owns the city? It doesn't mean anything except they lost a point at the end of the game. The building is still theirs. They still get all the benefits of it, okay? But at the end of the game, it is yours. Now, again, let's say I had 3 culture tokens. I spent 1 to increase the range. I have 2, and I roll a 3 on the 6-sided dice. After I roll the dice, I can spend as many culture tokens as I want to boost the die up 1. So I could spend my other 2 to make the 3 a 5 and a success. You can only do 1 successful cultural influence action a turn. Otherwise, it would be way too powerful. It's really a way to flip victory points during the game. So these are the 6 things you can do during a turn. To quickly review, you can purchase in advance, found a city, activate a city, which means you can build units, collect resources, or increase city size. You can move, you can do a civic improvement, or you can do a cultural influence. Now at the end of the round, meaning after everybody's had 3 turns or 9 actions, you do a status phase. During the status phase, you check to see if people have completed objectives. You receive a free advance. You draw an action and objective card. You're able to raise a size 1 city and get rid of it. When you do that, you get a gold. And then you determine the first player, which is based on the total of a person's happiness and culture level that are moving up and down the advancement board like we showed before. So these are the actions you can do during a turn of Clash of Cultures. I'm going to set up a sample 2-player game and run through a couple of turns just so you can see how it works.